Okay, so sustainability, no secret, continues, I guess, to be the number one concern, challenge, however you want to call it, for the data center industry. But there seem to be more and more companies sort of signing up or making a very firm commitment to net zero. And I'm just wondering what that entails. I mean, it's very easy to say, yes, we're committed to net zero, but what are the practicalities behind it? And do you think the companies that are making these commitments, should we say, fully understand that, or is it just a good soundbite and perhaps haven't worked out, what's required?
Yeah, sure. I think when you look at some of these drivers for sustainability for some of these organizations, we've got a lot of funding entering the market. So, this available funding comes with conditions, some of which has, sustainability conditions to get access to. So I think there's a lot of emphasis on making sure that, these organizations don't kind of miss a trick here. Also, from a financial perspective, is some of these financial penalties that may come further down the line for these companies if they aren't able to meet some of the net zero plans or targets that have been put in place now. So I think we can consider the financial drivers behind ensuring they deliver on the sustainability plans. I think there's also obviously customer drivers to make sure that there's clearly a demand from customers and users to align themselves with like-minded supply chains. So therefore, there's going to be an incentive to make sure that they're picking up the right credentials so that they can grab that market share as well. And then I think just kind of operationally is keeping one eye on the future allocation of resources. How do regional licenses and the allocation of land and power potentially become sort of dependent on a business's performance against their sort of net zero plans as well. So I think there's a few things there that are ultimately driving the emphasis behind sustainability and implementing the right things. I believe we're in this position where, especially in the UK and other countries, the grid is decarbonising every year, and with power being the largest operational component for these data centres, that actually it's starting to mean that we have to take a broader view on what sustainability means and how we implement that. So I guess in terms of commitment, I think what we've seen from a number of maybe the more mature operators and now the majority of others is that trying to embed that sustainability strategy really early on, and the importance of that is to make sure that you don't miss the ability to make timely interventions for sustainability improvements, whether that be on a live operational upgrade or a new build, really making sure that it's at the forefront of that plan so that we can start to make decisions around that next project that are going to bring that net zero plan through to fruition effectively.
And you mentioned there decarbonisation, and clearly the industry, a lot of their efforts are focused on that. But as you pointed out, it's mainly down to the power which gets supplied into data center industry, data center buildings. So I'm guessing, what involvement can data center organizations have in the decarbonisation? I say, are they just literally sort of passive customers that accept it, and as long as they know it's coming from renewable sources, that's as far as their sort of duty of care goes? Or are they getting much more practically involved in decarbonisation? And I suppose, if I can just follow up on that, what does that mean in practical terms, and sort of what's achieved? Is 100% decarbonisation, is that possible at all? Or?
Yeah, I think so. If I take a step back, renewable energy will continue to be a major focus for our industry. And as I mentioned, decarbonising the local electricity supply will sort of continue. And there's other dependencies, right, to make that happen. I think the challenges and investment to deploy at the capacities that we're talking about in our industry are still there. The ability to get this power from large wind farms, solar farms into the right grid location, hundreds of megawatts of wind farm, 100 kilometers away into the right grid location, is a major challenge logistically and also from an investment perspective, but continues to be rolled out. I think with what we're seeing is that there's now arguably marginal gains in the sort of design efficiency of data centers. The majority of the new builds are very efficient. So they're very efficient designs that are using renewable energy sources. So I think what's coming into play now is looking at the embedded carbon in the model as well, and taking a whole life carbon view on what a particular project consumes. So we're looking at the operational that we've done for a long time in the industry, and now we're starting to focus more on that embodied carbon of the building, of the materials that we've been using, of the products that are going into the facility as well, all of which are going to have an impact on the overall carbon, the carbon calculation of the facility, of the project. So I think we'll see more of that, and I think the importance of that is, again, creating these models that allow designers, operators, decision makers to have more informed decisions around these types of things that they can intervene and change if they want to, and not only from a carbon reduction point of view, but also considering maybe the local or project-based ESG targets as well, and how these types of models can influence those things for the organization. So I think in terms of I guess I've mentioned a few things there around design, around making decisions around materials and products, working collaboratively to ensure that we continue the use of renewable power sources. I think a big win here is going to be as the uptake of these facilities continue, and we ensure the utilization of these facilities is closely matched with the design, really supporting sort of the carbon optimization component, and the provision of resources in the locality. You don't want to end up with huge data centers in regions that can't be used because potentially certain applications aren't fit for purpose, or certain organizations don't want to use them. So it's just making sure that from a sector perspective, we're getting that right, and I think that's going to have a big impact when we consider the decarbonisation of the sector.
And you describe the situation currently, but AI is sort of on the horizon. I guess there's a sort of, it's almost like a double-edged thing. So clearly AI applications are going to make huge new demands on data centers, just as they're, if you like, addressing current sustainability. Then there's all this new computing requirement for power, but also the plus side, I guess AI can be used within the data center to make operation of and optimization of it smarter and more efficient to help sustainability. So I don't know if you can sort of say a little bit about each of those. How big is the AI impact, and will it sort of push back sustainability efforts just because of this huge amount of new power required? But similarly, it's going to solve part of the problem because it'll help data centers operate more efficiently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think they're sort of two very separate topics at the moment. I think on the one hand, really harnessing AI to optimize the ongoing maintenance, maybe, and the efficiency of the data center. I think some of that's in play at the moment. I think it's a necessary evolution so that we can be more efficient in the way we operate these facilities. I think there's a number of operators and data center owners that will be in catch-up mode in that space, and trying to realize those efficiencies and the benefits that come with that approach. I think when it comes to the ramp up of AI, the the real driving factor in the design is interesting, and because I see it's always driven predominantly by the hardware being adopted by the application. In this instance, AI has required the use of GPUs and sort of GPU level of performance to operate effectively, and this type of hardware ultimately requires some capability features within a data center to enable that. So high-ish density racks, 45 kilowatts a rack is what we're seeing in some of the AI deployments we've been involved in. Looking at how we can deliver that with air-cooled or maybe direct liquid-cooled methodologies to enable particular IT vendors and sort of stack configurations, and also kind of flexibility in the power distribution model as well to scale those environments. So whilst some of these aren't too dissimilar to other HPC deployments that the industry's been familiar with, whether that be research and development, or maybe if I wind the sort of clock back maybe 10-15 years ago when we do a lot of oil and gas exploration deployments, the key here is still focused around speed. So we're still needing to deliver on these sort of high performance applications to support this GPU type hardware, and we need to do that at a speed that supports the demand. So yeah, I think there's a couple of bits in there where it's trying to make sure we get the best of both worlds, really, to enable that AI platform rather.
And in terms of edge computing and maybe the slightly bigger picture of hybrid computing, so a mixture, but I'm just wondering, I can't remember, we probably were talking about edge computing several years ago, and it's sort of out there, and I know certain data center companies have built edge facilities, I guess they would say, or more local facilities. But and yes, we can have a debate about what edge means, but is it going to arrive in the sort of the scale that was once predicted, and how does it impact, I guess, the data center industry in terms of sustainability, resourcing and stuff? Or is it just another type of data center, no big sweat, it's fairly easy to address?
Yeah, sure. I think the edge has always been sort of presented in different forms depending on the application. I think we often can get confused with edge and size. I think in fairness, with hyperscale type deployments, they can potentially have caused that, what's edge for a hyperscaler versus what's not. I think what we've certainly seen with our enterprise clients is adoption of hybrid models have optimized both kind of commercially and technically how they deliver their IT services. So I think what we have, or what we will see, is people continue to assess the available platforms to align them to best suit that kind of technical requirement, and then ensure that they can start to leverage these products, if you like, to also arrive at other objectives and goals around sustainability and efficiency and ESG. Because certainly what we've seen is that there's different models for different users, whether that be an AI deployment, or whether that be a university or a hospital or a tech company. There's different ways to structure this to get the best out of the platforms that are available in the market. So absolutely have their place. Absolutely going to be these edge platforms are continue to be leveraged, and they will provide benefits to technology innovation, I'm sure.
And in terms of continuing on that, maybe the hybrid theme, you referenced a bit earlier about the cooling situation, but is it fair to say that we're going to arrive at a situation? I mean, everyone's saying liquid cooling's required for these high performance AI type applications. But air cooled is not going to go away. So we are going to arrive at a hybrid. So again, it's people working out what type of cooling solutions required for which environment. And also, I guess with liquid, I mean, it's very easy to say, yes, we're going to use liquid cooling, but sometimes the practicalities of installing it, particularly obviously in a legacy facility, as opposed to, planning for it in a greenfield. Just your thoughts as to how that sort of cooling landscape will develop, if you like.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that the cooling methodology will always be largely sort of determined and influenced by the IT vendors in terms of their development of technology and their hardware. So, whilst we can sort of debate the benefits of certain heat transfer methods and etc., what we're seeing is that there is particular hardware, as I mentioned earlier, around kind of GPUs and predominantly sort of those that we've seen deployed being air cooled. So therefore, the emphasis on the air cooled methodology to deliver that. But that's not to say that as these the hardware requirement is to deliver differently, then that will become more popular in areas. I mean, we've done a number of DLC deployments within the UK, and that's been aligned to a particular hardware that has been delivering on a particular application for a particular type of customer. So again, these are things that are very integrated in terms of the why, and so therefore, in terms of where we come into play, this is about enabling the type of IT hardware that these users want to adopt. They will determine the best performance hardware based on the technical and commercial requirement for their application. So it's great that there's different technologies available to adopt, and again, it's going to be important for people like us to have the ability to integrate those technologies when they're needed, and again do that quickly.
And in terms of data center location, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the edge, but I'm thinking, if you like, more on the bigger picture. I mean, the Nordics, no secret, obviously there's a lot of activity there. The advantages being plentiful supply of renewable energy. I guess the ambient temperature is more conducive to cooling, etc. I mean, clearly for certain applications, the data center needs to be very close to, but for many where it doesn't matter so much, can you see that as a continuing trend where the industry will build sort of further north, further south, if latency isn't the be all and end all, or is it a bit of a, should we say, a bit of a bubble, and then things will, I don't know, just your thoughts as to how important, where data centers built as part of the sustainability debate, or just more generally.
Yeah, I think location is definitely going to become a much bigger topic for some if it hasn't been already. And I guess the reason for saying it like that, we've seen the trend over the last 3 to 5 years is that latency is becoming less of a priority for clients, which starts to open up these locations for sure. Certainly some fantastic opportunities around sustainability, both in terms of where these locations provision their power from, and predominantly from renewable sources as well, and also that's reflected in the cost of some of this power as well. So I believe we'll start to see more workloads move to these regions, because technically they have the ability to do that now, and they can also leverage the sustainability and also commercial opportunities that reside there as well. I also think that there's going to be a requirement through necessity based on the available capacity within certain regions as well. We know that we've got constraints in certain regions around power. We know we're getting constraints around local authority approvals as well for new data center deployments, and so therefore there's going to be a need to start to look into these different locations in order to support the demand ultimately.
Okay, maybe that was broadly, I guess, under sustainability, that sort of part. And before we finished, a couple of other S's. I mean, the skills situation in the industry, it always intrigues me, because you won't meet anyone who doesn't say we haven't got there's a big impending skills crisis, but nobody looks to be that stressed about it. It's like, yeah, it's, whatever. And we also got, I guess, the supply chain. I mean, COVID clearly knocked everyone for six. And then there's geopolitics. So just your thoughts. I mean, as I say, if people don't address the skills shortage, i.e. sort of mature folks from the industry leaving in large amounts and just not enough people replacing, are we going to get some kind of a bottleneck? Like, I mean, like in the semiconductor industry, which I do a bit of work in, somebody's delayed opening a new manufacturing plant because they say they can't get enough skilled people. Will we see that situation in the data center space? And then just on the supply chain again, will we get shortened supply chains for more security? Just any thoughts you have on either of those topics?
I think so. To address the skill shortage, I think the reality is the scale is much bigger than maybe some people think, and the challenges are in full effect right now. I think that observations is that skill shortage is having an impact that's resulting in things like poor quality of work being produced, maybe programs not being met because of the amount of resource to deliver them, or related to my earlier point, the quality of work's not there, so it's taking longer to deliver the quality. I think for some it's our uncharted territory, in that there's a volume of work in the market and they haven't been in a position where they've not had enough people to support that demand, or the right people to support that demand. So I think it's a huge debate, and it's going to continue to take its toll, certainly for the short term. Absolutely, there is some fantastic work in the industry to correct that position, and I think there's a long way to go, and so ultimately, to answer your question, I think that we're experiencing the bottleneck right now. You've got scenarios where clients want to move quicker, and the supply chain in the market can't quite do that at the moment, from a design and from a delivery perspective. When it comes to sort of supply chain, I guess, in terms of ultimately the products and materials that are needed to build these environments, I think the lead times are still, what we're seeing now are still significantly longer than sort of pre-pandemic times. But I believe that's just the new normal now, which is being a result of the market demand. The factories are only as big as they are, still trying to service a larger demand. Yes, trying to put more capacity into that market, but it takes time, again with parts, again with stock. So I don't think there's any sort of pandemic impact at all at the moment in the material and the product supply chain. But what I do believe is that there's a demand impact that's now seeing the lead times as they are, and until these larger factories, more parts, more materials sort of catch up, we'll continue to see that, and also making sure that they can be produced and get access to the right locations as well, in terms of transportation, getting these from the places of manufacture to where they're being installed. That's a sort of a key part, and we've seen the disruption of that in the past, and certainly something that needs to be considered as part of a project.
And just finally, before we finish, a couple of sort of bits directly relevant to Keysource in terms of I see you've I don't know, cooperation with PTS Consulting. Just be good to understand a little bit about that. And also, I might have missed the point here, but I've seen you've been promoting CFD, your expertise in that. I don't know if that's a new sort of offering or you're just highlighting the fact that it's something you've always been doing. Just yeah, again, if you can just give us a bit of detail about both of those.
Yeah, sure. So with PTS, we've signed a collaboration agreement, and that's to support a number of projects for us both in the Middle East. So we've got resources both here in the UK and also with the PTS resources in their Middle East locations as well. So we've had some projects with some customers, and it seemed like the natural progression to formalize that collaboration, and we'll continue to deliver on those through this year, and hopefully new projects throughout next year as well. In terms of CFD, I mean, the computational fluid dynamics is a service that we've been delivering for sort of 15 plus years, I suspect. But it's something that has really been I guess reinvigorated by some of the higher density designs that we've been talking about. Also some of the larger scale projects that are really trying to validate the approaches to the cooling design, both throughout Europe and globally as well. So I think we've just done a little bit of work recently to remind everybody how important the CFD process can be to validate that design, and also not just validate, but actually really drive the design process as well. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
And so, if it's possible to summarize, we covered quite a lot of ground, but in terms of when you sort of arrive in the office on a Monday morning, are you all positive and think, yeah, the industry is heading in the right direction, it's all fantastic? Or are there little bits you think, oh dear, this is, there are some bumps along the road? Just, I guess, how positive or negative are you in terms of, some of what we've discussed? Is it all going to work out, or do you foresee a time when data centers are, I won't say they'll be in a moratorium, but if we need 100 new data centers, only 50 will get built because there just isn't enough materials and or people to build them, operate them, etc. I suppose, how good could things be? How bad might things be if that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an optimistic view for sure. I mean, the data center sector is a necessary prerequisite to deliver on technology demand and innovation. So kind of what a nice place to be, really. There's no slowing down. We can see innovations every day. We can see the advances in technology every day, and we're absolutely underpinning that industry, and also the speed of how that gets realized. So massively optimistic. I think we've touched on a few things throughout the conversation, but there's a ton of stuff for us that we need to improve on and to overcome, which the reality is will come with maturity of the industry, how we tackle more regulation and legislation head on, the availability of resources, political understanding now, especially in the news recently, around trying to make sure that how key areas are addressed to sort of obtain sort of regional and global requirements to support our sector. So yeah, really optimistic, lots of things to do, lots of stuff to get better in. So makes it a really exciting place to be.
Okay, that's great. As ever, lovely to chat to you, John, and I really appreciate your time. So thanks very much. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Phil.